Welcome to Film Fu, where the cursor is clears the kicks. I'm Shifu Payne, and it's no secret that since the build-up and release of Spider-Man No Way Home, there has been a certain rekindling of the flames of fan favoritism in terms of certain characters and franchises.
Most especially with Andrew Garfield and his interpretation of the Spider-Man character. At the time of release, so close to the fan favourite Tobey Maguire interpretation, many acted either with hostility or with indifference, making those who liked the interpretation a staggering minority for some time.
As such, it's caused people to reconsider their opinions on these previously established characters.
Uncle, these people aren't real fans. They hated Garfield only a year ago.
Nephew, with time comes change. People change their opinions quickly as their perspective widens and changes. Look at this on the bright side. Now there are more fans to appreciate Garfield and share a nice pot of tea with.
Well, I'm here to establish not only what the merits are within this film, but also to understand why this film was so overlooked for so long.
Released in 2012 and directed by Mark Webb,
Too easy.
the film's intentions were to create a more realistic look at this character and his origin, juxtaposed against the more idealized Sam Raimi trilogy.
A departure, to be sure, but a welcome one?
I mean, this film was coming out the same year as the first Avengers film and the end of the Dark Knight trilogy, not to mention that it was redoing something already considered a classic after only ending less than 5 years beforehand.
Any way you slice it, the film had an uphill battle, so why not do something new and interesting with the material? But just how well did it do those different things? Let's find out as we take a look at the plot.
The film opens with a young Peter Parker, who is quickly orphaned and left in the care of his aunt and uncle, played by Sally Field and Martin Sheen, growing up to be played by Garfield. He's a social outcast and an awkward person not sure of where he fits in, being picked on by the resident bullies while secretly having a crush on Gwen Stacy, played by Emma Stone. I mean, who wouldn't? Discovering that there was more to his parents' disappearance, Parker travels to Oscorp for answers, winding up getting the fabled spider bite, as Peter learns to get to grip with his new powers while becoming closer to Gwen and developing a relationship with his father's old research partner, Dr. Kurt Connors, played by Risa Fans. Tragedy strikes when Uncle Ben dies.
What a twist!
Seeking revenge on his uncle's killer, Peter develops the identity of Spider-Man, an identity he must use once Connors uses an experimental formula and accidentally transforms into the Lizard, as Connors loses his humanity, becoming bent on turning the whole city into giant lizards, leaving the city to hang in the balance. Can Peter act in time to save New York City and live up to the responsibility of Spider-Man?
Jesus Christ, that is a lot to fit in.
There is apparently a lot more to it, as there are a bunch of deleted scenes, adding more context to plot points and adding extra details, such as hinting that Peter getting his powers wasn't random, a plot point handled for better or worse in the sequel. But one of these deleted scenes harkens to the overall theme of this film, responsibility, but more specifically, the responsibility and role of fatherhood.
And one way or another, we see how each character is affected by this theme.
Peter has grown up knowing his father left him and died. As someone who has grown up without a father, I can tell you that not having that figure in your developing years is isolating. You feel like a part of you is missing, and that you have a ton of questions and having to figure it out for yourself without anyone to help. But as Peter realizes, while he was so caught up in the idea of not having his father, he missed the fact that there was someone there in that role, his uncle. It's obvious that Ben Parker is trying to be the father figure in his life, setting moral boundaries and guidelines, dealing with the discipline of when Peter messes up or is irresponsible. And it's not until the end of the film that Peter realizes that the father figure he needed was right in front of him all along.
And along the way, he tries to supplement, trying to have the intellectual father figure he wants, when he actually has and needs the moral father figure directly in front of him.
But as we see in a deleted scene with Connors, we see some of the reason he wants his arm back, as he feels he's lacking as a father, that he can reclaim some of the ability to feel that role he feels was lost with his arm.
It adds to that motivation, but it also draws more similarities between the two characters of Peter and Dr. Connors.
Both are lacking in aspects of fatherhood, but while one feels they lacked that figure in life, the other thinks they lack the ability to play that role, something which they both try and account for and try to supplement in each other.
But that's on the Parker and Connors side. What about their aliases?
Carl Jung described the psychological theory of the shadow, with a darker, less seen segment of someone's personality, a projection of insecurity and fallacy in someone, or the parts of a person that they do not often share with others. With this film, both Peter and Connor's shadows manifest externally, with Peter using the identity of Spider-Man as a tool of vengeance, and acting almost like the bullies that tormented him, while Connors projects his own feelings of weakness and fallacy to the rest of the world and wants to enforce the similar changes he underwent to everyone, thinking it will be better that way. But as the film goes on, the identity of Spider-Man becomes an expression of Peter's morality that Ben Parker instilled in him, a morality that Peter demonstrated right from the minute we saw him, turning the shadow into an extension of his uncle's lessons and values rather than a tool of vengeance. But eventually Connors must wish his dreams of what he sees as whole goodbye in order to do what is right.
But who wants to talk about morality and psychology? We're here for action! So let's take a look at this film's fight scenes.
The scene we're looking at today takes place towards the end of the second act and the start of the third, as the Lizard has discovered Spider-Man's identity and attacks the school to end him for good.
You've heard of the swirly, now make ready for the Floridian Special.
Now obviously these guys are not professional martial artists or anything, so instead of looking at technique, we're instead going to be looking at strategy and tactics.
Which begins with Peter using his webbing to sweep the Lizard underfoot, going from there to climbing onto the back and heading into a knockout punch. But the Lizard performs a series of throws, including one through a wall, pinning his arms, as well as his webbing, aka reach advantage, before motioning to strike with his claws. But after the cameraman has put the camera back on the tripod,
and I've grabbed some aspirin for my migraine,
we see Peter grabbing hold of the Lizard's leg before grabbing his bag with his outfit in.
So as we see directly from minute one, and as we will see throughout the rest of this fight scene, we see these characters acting a lot like their animal aliases, as we have so far seen with Peter climbing onto the back of his opponent and trying to sting him. We'll see more of this throughout this fight scene, but it's important to put a pin in it now, just so we're looking out for it going ahead.
Now that Peter is catwalk ready, we move into Spider-Man using the environment by striking the Lizard with the overhead lights, which was actually a distraction as we get more of that animalistic inspiration, with Spidey sneaking out of eyeline before again climbing onto the back of the larger opponent, starting to try and web him up, much like a spider cocoons a fly to make ready to eat it. But as Spider-Man is only a spider, he's easily overpowered and shaken off, having to then evade the claws of the Lizard and try to pin him, only to then inadvertently give him a new weapon.
Smartest in your class, you say? Let's quickly talk pacing, as so far it has been quite engaging.
Fitting a lot into a matter of a couple of minutes, but still having those couple of moments to slow down and let the audience catch up before moving on.
Which is good, as this scene has displayed a lot of progression and a lot of changing circumstances.
We started with Lizard versus unsuited Peter, moving to Lizard versus Spider-Man, the use of the environment on both sides, and as we see, we get the power display of the Lizard being able to regrow appendages, Spider-Man receiving support and having to defend civilians.
The scene builds on top of itself, always adding something new and keeping the scene engaging.
But getting back to the fight, the Lizard uses his tail to once again overpower his opponent, and as previously stated, grows a new tail.
This scene is a perfect articulation of Spider-Man's status as the underdog.
He's not a physical match to the Lizard here, more often evading and pinning than having any strength advantage, which is often an aspect of the character, outthinking and defeating his opponents through his intellect rather than his strength.
See, so far I felt as though I've been talking about things tangential to this actual fight scene, more so than the actual fight scene itself. Oh well.
After the needed assistance from Gwen,
Gosh, how great is that Gwen? I sure hope nothing terrible happens to her or anything.
once again Spidey cocoons the Lizard and gets Gwen to safety, not before the camera focuses on this random guy.
Oh well, not important.
For as we see, the Lizard once more overpowered Spider-Man, has him as his mercy, and then leaves.
Okay, I understand that the police had just arrived and that was obviously a problem, but, I mean, why not just kill him?
Would it have been too much trouble to bite off his head a la Venom and then leave? What, did you leave the stove on? And hold on, why run? You're a giant lizard, and as made clear later, bullets don't hurt you, at least not for long. What was even the point of this fight scene?
What, did you just want to fuck with him?
Were you planning on leaving a whoopee cushion on his seat, but then we're like, yeah, fuck it.
Well, actually, deleted scene.
We see Connors back at the way the Lizard had come in, having changed back and then leading Peter back into the Lizard's lair to explain himself.
It's really beginning to feel as though they cut out a lot of the scenes which made this film a coherent story. I mean, we've had the Snyder cut, release the web cut, I say!
The film ends with the Lizard being defeated, another father, this time Gwen's, dying,
Whoops.
As with this sacrifice, the burden of responsibility towards the city and the welfare of its people become Peter's, having to now fill the role others have filled for him. After the affirming words left for him by Ben Parker, Peter carries on as the one and only, for the second time out of 3, amazing Spider-Man.
So despite how overlooked and often underappreciated this film is, does it still hold any merit? I say yes.
Most of all, this film was tripped out the gate by timing, between 2 massive blockbusters and coming so soon after a beloved franchise. I think the studio, in its push for a Spider-Man film, failed it, and Garfield, especially in the edit.
Seriously, check out the deleted scenes for this film when you get the chance. See, so many of these scenes are so essential to the plot and story and themes of the film, and yet they're just left on the cutting room floor for no other reason than just runtime.
And therein lies, I think, why the film and Andrew Garfield's take are often overlooked. Because after that mistreatment, the film was only okay. Not great, not terrible, just okay. So why would general audiences invest time and money into something that was okay, when something considered a classic could be watched and enjoyed instead?
It is a very good thing that time is becoming kinder to Andrew Garfield's take on the character. And all I want to say is that if Garfield does get another chance to play this character again, I say we keep Avi Arad as far away from this as humanly possible. Thank you for watching this week's video, and in the comments let me know if you've seen this film and what your take is on it. Do you like Garfield's interpretation of the Spider-Man character? Do you think it is worth making a 3rd installment of the series? But until then, thank you all for watching, and until next time everyone, peace be with you.